Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm sure the whole House will want to send our thoughts to the family and friends of the Royal Marine soldier who sadly died in a training incident earlier this week. And if you'll forgive me, Mr. Speaker, could we take just a minute to pay tribute to Nicholas Parsons, who passed away this week, and thank him for his work in broadcasting. This Friday, the UK will be leaving the European Union. The actions we take over the months and years ahead will shape our future role within the international community for generations to come. Britain's role in the world will face one of its most important tests later this year when COP26 meets in Glasgow to discuss the need for drastic action to tackle the climate emergency. Given the scale of the crisis, does the Prime Minister think that we as a country should be financing billions of pounds on oil and gas projects all around the world?
Well, Mr. Speaker, let me first of all say in deference to in memory of Nicholas Parsons, I think we should all avoid hesitation, deviation or repetition in this House. And I can answer very clearly by saying I do think it important that the UK continues to campaign against hydrocarbon emissions of all kinds, as we do. And he will have noticed that we have just decided to ban support for all extraction of coal around the world. And that is a massive step forward by this country.
Jeremy Corbyn. Speaker, the report from the BBC and Unearthed investigation has revealed that a government agency has helped to finance oil and gas projects which will emit 69 million tonnes of carbon a year, nearly a sixth of the total emissions from this country alone. The effects of climate change have been felt in this country with flooding in Yorkshire and the Midlands and, of course, with the wildfires in Australia. Despite pledging to reach net zero emissions by 2050, on current track, the government will only meet the target by 2099. Can we afford to wait another 79 years before we reach net zero in this country?
Mr. Speaker, this government has doubled spending on tackling climate change internationally to £11.6 billion. And I'm not surprised, actually, because he's so pessimistic, he's so gloomy. Don't forget, Mr. Speaker, that this country has reduced CO2 emissions already by 42% on 1990 levels, whilst the economy under this Conservative government has grown by 73%. That's our record. We can do both.
Prime Minister Jeremy Corbyn has voted against every proposal to take action on climate change until he became Prime Minister. I hope for the sake of our future he changes his mind before COP26 meets in Glasgow. And speaking of failing to take a global lead on climate change, the US Secretary of State is visiting later today. President Trump's latest Middle East peace plan is not a peace plan. It will annex Palestinian territory, lock in illegal Israeli colonisation, transfer Palestinian citizens of Israel and deny Palestinian people their fundamental rights. When the government meets with the US Secretary of State later today, will he make it clear that the British government will stand for a genuine, internationally backed peace plan rather than this stuff proposed by Trump yesterday?
Well, Mr. Speaker, let's be clear. This is a problem that has bedevilled the world for decades, and the Middle East, of course, in particular. No peace plan is perfect, but this has the merit of a two-state solution. It is a two-state solution. It would ensure that Jerusalem is both the capital of Israel and of the Palestinian people. And I urge him, rather than being so characteristically negative, to reach out to his friends, my friends, our friends in the Palestinian Authority, to Mahmoud Abbas, for whom I have the highest respect, and urge him for once to engage with this initiative, to get talking rather than to leave a political vacuum.
Jeremy Corbyn. I have the greatest respect for President Abbas and those in the Palestinian Authority. I've met them many times. And as the Prime... Mr. Speaker, this is actually a very serious issue, and I think the Prime Minister should acknowledge that President Trump's plan will not bring any move towards peace, has no support from any Palestinian anywhere in the world, and maybe this would be a good opportunity for the British government to say frankly and candidly to the US, on this you are wrong. There needs to be a two-state solution with international support. The kind of test for this country for the future has to be how we work to end conflict abroad. The Saudi Arabian-led intervention in Yemen has led to the needless deaths of innocent men, women and children. Yet this government has broken the ban on Saudi arms sales 3 times, while Donald Trump has vetoed a ban on arms exports 3 times. Will the Prime Minister confirm that he will respect his own ban and will, when he meets the US later today, ask them to stop selling arms to Saudi Arabia while they continue the bombardment of the people of Yemen?
Prime Minister.
Well, as he knows, the Saudi-led operation in Yemen is supported by the UN, a UN mandate to restore the government of Yemen. And it is absolutely vital. He's completely correct that the crisis in Yemen continues, and it's a tragedy for the people of Yemen. But I think what he should rather be doing is supporting the activity of the British UN negotiator, Martin Griffiths, who is doing a fantastic job in trying to bring the sides together and to get a peaceful solution led by Yemenis.
Jeremy Corbyn. Of course they're trying to bring about a peace process, but it's not helped when one country supplies arms to Saudi Arabia, which has led to the deaths of 100,000 people in Yemen last year alone. According to Human Rights Watch, Saudi authorities have stepped up their arbitrary arrests, trials and convictions and killing of peaceful dissidents and activists, including a large-scale crackdown against the women's rights movement. When the Prime Minister heads to Riyadh later this year for the G20, would he make it clear that any future trade arrangement with Saudi Arabia will be dependent on an improvement of their human rights laws and their human rights record, particularly in respect of women in that country?
Well, Mr. Speaker, it won't have escaped the House's attention. The right honourable gentleman is a supporter and defender of the Iranian regime in Tehran, who have grossly exacerbated the tensions in Yemen by sending missiles to attack the civilian population of Saudi Arabia. And of course we raise human rights in Saudi Arabia. My right honourable Foreign Secretary raised the rights of women in Saudi Arabia only the other day. We will continue to do that, and we will do that ever more vigorously, ever more energetically, as we pursue our policy of a global Britain doing free trade deals around the world, which will give us the leverage to make exactly these points.